Comic Boom.
Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review Deceased Unkillables #1, the quasi-sequel to Tom Taylor's much beloved Deceased series, the series that caught 2019 by surprise. And clearly DC editor, DC guru Dan Didio was one of the first to express surprise at the success of this series. Of the series of Deceased, and it's really no surprise to anybody that Tom Taylor was asked to do a sequel to it, and that's how we end up with Unkillables. Now, what Unkillables #1 deals with, essentially, is the bad guys, the villains, in particular, Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, along with his daughter Rose, as well as, quite frankly, a whole slew of villains, including Jason Todd, who, Jason Todd isn't really much of a villain, he's kind of an anti-hero. But we end up with a very interesting juxtaposition of character arcs in Unkillables #1. In particular, we go back and forth between following Deathstroke, Slade Wilson, and Jason Todd. Now, what's interesting about this right off the bat is that we're getting an immediate establishment of something very unique in this storyline so far, and that is Slade Wilson, the Terminator, Deathstroke. He is immune to the anti-life virus. The twisted anti-life equation, that was essentially twisted by Darkseid in the beginning of Deceased. Well, this is a virus that spreads electronically through smartphones and iPhones and that kind of thing. It immediately infects Deathstroke, because Deathstroke is right into electronics, and because of Deathstroke's unique body chemistry, he is actually immune. His body fights off the infection, and so he's one of the very, very few whose blood probably appears to be immune to the disease, and so unquestionably, he's probably one of the important people that the good guys at some point who are now on another planet. At some point, they're going to have to get a hold of Deathstroke, and because if they're aware that Deathstroke actually has the cure to the virus in his blood, that's kind of a significant plot point. And so Deathstroke staying alive is very important. Of course, Tom Taylor has a nasty habit of killing off people when you least expect it, so there's no guarantee that Deathstroke's going to remain alive for very long, and so it's going to be interesting to see. Also, one has to wonder if Rose, his daughter, also has the same immunity. I'm not sure if that was clear or not in this first issue. We'll have to wait and see. What is interesting is Deathstroke ultimately ends up rescuing his daughter Rose, and they end up on Ball Island, which is essentially the secret headquarters of Vandal Savage, and it's basically this island which has been it looks like a series of mountains, but in fact it's been carved out inside by tree lobsters fleeing rats. And over the centuries, the tree lobsters learned to survive, and they created this inside cavern it's now being used by the villains to protect themselves from the virus that is destroying the planet Earth. And we have Vandal Savage, Solomon Grundy, the Creeper, the Cheetah, Mr. Freeze, Lady Shiva, Bane, and Deadshot are all there, basically holding out, and they're the supervillains that are holding out and not sure what the heck they're going to be doing as the world collapses and dies around them. As Vandal Savage himself makes a point of saying in this issue, this is not the first extinction level event that Vandal Savage has witnessed. Vandal Savage, of course, being immortal, he's lived for centuries, and even though he's technically dead in the mainstream universe, this takes place in a different universe. This Deceased universe does not take place on any Earth that we know of. This is essentially an Elseworlds tale, even though it's not really been advertised as such. So this does obviously not take place in the mainstream DC universe. While Deathstroke is having his misadventures that ultimately take him to Ball Island, we have Jason Todd that has quite a unique experience. He ends up going to Wayne Manor, into the Batcave, discovering the bodies of Damian, Batman, pardon me, not Damian, but of Batman, of Dick Grayson, and I believe of Alfred. In any event, he ends up burying them, and he ends up he utilizes the Batcave's resources, in particular the Batmobile, asks the Batmobile if there's any members of the Bat family still alive in Gotham, and which ones have heartbeats, and there's 8 still alive, but apparently only 2 have heartbeats. He eventually meets up with Commissioner Gordon, who wants to find Barbara Gordon, his daughter. Unfortunately, he does find Barbara Gordon. She is, of course, unfortunately, she's been killed. And we know that she was killed, I believe, from the first two issues of Deceased, or she was killed by a possessed, I'm not really sure. Was it... I'm not sure how Barbara Batgirl died. I'll have to go and review my issues of Deceased. But in any event, it's tragic seeing what happens. Even they come across the body of the Joker. They run into Harley Quinn, Jason Todd. There's a great sequence where Jason Todd wishes he was the one that killed the Joker. But since he never killed the Joker, he still tries to get some revenge by putting the Joker on the hood of the Batmobile and driving through Gotham. It's quite funny. They end up helping a group of school kids on buses, and they end up, at the end of the issue, holding putting some children into a building to protect them from the people infected by the virus. And of course, Commissioner Gordon has to tell Jason Todd, maybe instead of, maybe take the Joker off the hood of your car so you don't scare the children, would probably be a good idea. In any event, this is typical great Tom Taylor stuff. He's got humor here. He's got great action. He's got things that take you by surprise. There's a great sequence even with Mirror Master where Mirror Master ends up rescuing Deathstroke and Rose, and he can see through various mirrors all over the planet. You get a sense of the horror of the world, and Mirror Master even warns Deathstroke and Rose that, look, be careful which mirror you look through, because the world is a horrific place now. And Tom Taylor does an excellent job of conveying that in the narrative. And of course, there's a new artist here, Carl Mostert. Carl Mostert is... At first, it took a while for me to get used to the art. At first, I thought I didn't like it. The more I read it, the more I kind of got acclimated to it. The art, Carl Mostert does actually a reasonably good job on the art here. I think it conveys the horror reasonably well. And the previous artist, Hairstein, is no longer used. So this is a different artist, but it works well. Rex Locus is he's the colorist. He does a pretty good job here. There's really a sense of horror in this story, a sense of tragedy and horror and hopelessness to this narrative, with that glimmer of hope being the fact that Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, and his daughter Rose potentially being the ones that can save humanity. The question is, will ultimately, over the next two issues, because this is only a 3-issue series, how is this 3-issue series going to end? I have a feeling it's just going to end with more tragedy. Will it end with the death of Slade Wilson? And because if Slade Wilson dies, so does the hope of humanity. Unless, of course, he can get to the planet where the heroes are at. How is he even going to be aware that they're there? And because ultimately, the savior of humanity could be Slade Wilson, but of course he's got to stay alive to do that. And one thing about survival rates in any story written by Tom Taylor, where he gets to script his own universe, people tend to die rather abruptly and suddenly, so you never know what to expect. That's why I love this series. This is Darkness done right. Take notes, DC. I'm glad you're giving this series a shot. I wish it was more than 3 issues, quite frankly, but I'm happy to see it. Guys, tell me what you think of Deceased Unkillables #1. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Metropolis40. And until next time, Comic Boom out.